You ever been in the middle of a conversation and suddenly it feels like somebody flipped a switch? The tone shifts, voices rise, and what started out as a discussion quickly turns into a battle. Maybe it's with your partner, maybe it's with a coworker, maybe it's with your kid, and before you even know it, you're no longer trying to solve a problem. You're just trying to survive the argument. And in that moment, what happens? Your heart rate picks up, your chest feels tight, your thoughts start racing, and your mouth is moving faster than your brain can process. You find yourself saying things you didn't plan on saying, or maybe even things you don't mean. And then afterwards, you think, why did I go there? Why did I let it get that far? That's the power of emotions. They don't just show up in the conversation, they take it over. They hijack the wheel, and suddenly you're on a road you never wanted to drive down. Now, here's the thing. You can't stop emotions from showing up. You're human. They're human. It's going to happen. You can't control the trigger every time, but you can control what you do once emotions are in the driver's seat. And that single choice, what you do in that moment, decides everything. It decides if the conversation escalates into damage you can't undo, or if it calms into something that actually brings clarity. Think about it. How many relationships have been bruised, sometimes even broken, because of words spoken in a moment of high emotion? Words that weren't planned, words that weren't fair, words that maybe weren't even true, but they got said anyway because nobody slowed down enough to stop them. And how many conflicts at work could have been avoided if somebody had just recognized the moment and said, hold on, this is getting hot. Let's not burn the whole house down. When a conversation becomes highly emotional, your instinct will almost always be to do the wrong thing. Instinct says, push harder, argue stronger, defend yourself faster. Instinct says, don't let them win. Don't let them steamroll you. Get louder so they hear you. But here's the reality. When both people are shouting, no one is listening. It's like two radio stations playing on the same frequency. All you get is static. So what do you do instead? You pause, you breathe, you create space. Because here's the secret. Calm is contagious. And the first person to slow down almost always shifts the direction of the conversation. That doesn't mean you're weak. That doesn't mean you're letting them get away with something. It means you're wise enough to realize that control doesn't come from volume, it comes from composure. Think about a fire. What does a fire need to grow? Oxygen. If you want the fire to get bigger, all you have to do is fan it. Arguments are the same way. When emotions flare, every sarcastic jab, every defensive response, every raised voice is oxygen to that fire. But when you pause, when you slow your breathing, when you lower your tone, you're cutting off oxygen. And a fire without oxygen doesn't last. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Jefferson, if I pause in the middle of a heated moment, they're going to think they've won. They're going to think I don't have an answer. And that's exactly the fear that keeps people stuck in the cycle. We mistake pausing for weakness when in reality it's the strongest move you can make. Because anyone can react. That takes zero skill. But it takes real strength to respond with intention. I've been in those moments where somebody is firing on all cylinders, emotions are high, and everything in me wanted to snap back. And I'll be honest, sometimes I did. Sometimes I matched their tone, matched their volume, tried to win the verbal tug of war. And every time I walked away from those moments, I didn't feel stronger. I felt drained. I felt like I'd lost something, even if I won the argument. Because winning an argument at the cost of connection isn't winning. But then there were the times I chose to pause, the times I let silence do the heavy lifting, the times I breathed before speaking. And you know what happened? The energy in the room shifted, maybe not instantly, but gradually. Because calm has a way of disarming chaos. You can't fight with someone who refuses to swing back. And listen, I'm not saying it's easy. When you're heated, when you're triggered, when your emotions are running wild, the hardest thing to do is pause. But that's where the power is. That's where the difference is made. And here's something practical. When you feel that rise inside you, when you feel your chest get tight and your words start racing, literally tell yourself, slow down, say it in your head, slow down. Because your body is going fast, your thoughts are going fast, and the only way to regain control is to consciously slow the pace. Take a breath, literally breathe, because your breathing sets the pace for your speaking. Shallow, fast breathing leads to shallow, fast words. Slow, deep breathing leads to slower, steadier words. And steady words are stronger than sharp ones. And here's another piece. You don't have to fill every silence. Sometimes the best response in a heated moment is no response for a few seconds. Let the silence hang. Let the weight of the moment settle. Silence can be louder than shouting when it's intentional, because it communicates something. I'm not going to let this moment drag me where I don't want to go. Here's what I've learned. When you lower the temperature, you regain control. And when you regain control, you influence the entire direction of the conversation. That's how you lead, even in conflict. You're not controlling the other person. You can't. You're controlling yourself, and that's enough to shift everything. Now, don't get me wrong. Slowing down doesn't mean you let people bulldoze you. It doesn't mean you sit there and take whatever comes your way. What it means is you decide how you're going to show up in that moment instead of letting your emotions decide for you. That's real strength, because the louder person isn't always the stronger person. The calmer person is. You've probably heard the phrase before, don't add fuel to the fire. And that sounds obvious, right? Nobody hears that and thinks, oh, wow, I've never considered that. But here's the funny thing. We all know it. And yet, in the heat of a highly emotional conversation, what do most people do? They grab the biggest can of gasoline they can find and they pour it straight onto the flames. And by gasoline, I mean defensiveness, sarcasm, criticism, raised voices, those sharp little comebacks that we all know will land like daggers. Those things feel good in the moment, but they're fuel. And fire always wants more fuel. Think about the last time you were in an argument. If you're really honest with yourself, how many times did you feed it instead of starve it? Someone comes at you with a tone, and instead of responding calmly, you match it. They throw in a little sarcasm, you throw back a little more. They cut you off, you cut them off right back. Before long, the conversation isn't even about the original problem anymore. It's about who can hit harder, who can outlast the other person, who can get the last word in. And here's the truth, no one wins that. Nobody walks away from that kind of back and forth thinking, man, I really feel understood now. That solved everything. No, you walk away with regret, with distance in the relationship, with wounds that may take days, weeks, or even years to heal. So what do you do instead? When a conversation is burning hot, the goal isn't to fuel it, it's to starve it. And the way you starve it is by refusing to react. You choose to respond. Those are two very different things. Reaction is instant. It's your emotions running straight out of your mouth. Response is intentional. It's you pausing, thinking, and then choosing your words in a way that moves things forward instead of pushing them backward. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of the hardest skills to learn. Because when you're being attacked, when you feel misunderstood, when your pride gets poked, every part of your body is screaming, defend yourself right now. And in those moments, silence feels like surrender. Pausing feels like weakness, but it's not. It's actually the opposite. Because when you're calm enough to hold back, you're proving to yourself that you're not a slave to the other person's tone. You're not going to let their behavior decide yours. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in an argument with someone you love. Maybe it's your partner. Things are heating up. They accuse you of not caring. They say, "You never listen to me. You don't even care about this relationship." And instantly, you feel the anger rise up in you because that's not true. You know it's not true. And your first instinct is to snap back with, "Oh, really? I don't care? Look at everything I do for you. Who's the one keeping this whole thing afloat? You've got to be kidding me." That's reaction. That's gasoline. Now picture a different response. Same scenario, but this time you take a breath. Instead of matching their volume, you lower yours. And you say, "I hear you. I can tell you're upset. I do care. Let's slow this down for a second." That doesn't mean you agree with their accusation. It doesn't mean you're saying they're right. What it means is you've just chosen to pour water instead of gasoline. You didn't feed the fire. You cooled it. See, one of the fastest ways to calm an emotional storm is not by winning, but by showing that you're listening. People don't need you to prove them wrong right away. They need you to acknowledge how they feel. And I'll tell you this, acknowledgement is not agreement. Let me say that again, acknowledgement is not agreement. When you say, "I hear that you're frustrated," you're not saying, "You're right and I'm wrong." You're simply saying, "I care enough to recognize what you're feeling." And that act alone lowers defenses faster than a well-structured argument ever could. Because here's the thing, highly emotional conversations are rarely about facts. They're about feelings. And if you don't address the feelings, the facts don't matter. You can line up all the evidence, all the proof, all the logic, and the other person won't hear any of it if they don't feel heard themselves. That's why so many arguments go in circles. It's not because people are too dumb to see the facts. It's because they're too hurt to hear them. Think about it in your own life. How many times have you been in an argument and all you wanted, at the core, was for the other person to just understand how upset you were? Not fix it, not explain it away, not prove you wrong. Just understand. And how did you feel when they finally did? The temperature dropped, didn't it? You felt your shoulders relax. Your voice softened. That's the power of acknowledgement. But acknowledgement requires swallowing your pride long enough to not go on the attack. It requires seeing past the sharp words and recognizing the emotion underneath. And that's where most people miss it. They hear the attack and they think, "I've got to defend myself." But if you can train yourself to listen past the attack and hear the emotion, you can respond in a way that changes the entire dynamic. For example, someone says, "You don't care about me." Instead of defending yourself, you hear the emotion, "I feel uncared for." And you respond to the feeling, not the words. You say, "I don't want you to feel that way. That's not my intention." Do you see the difference? One response fuels the fire, the other pours water on it. People don't calm down because you prove them wrong. They calm down because they feel understood. And if you miss that, you'll end up debating data points when the real issue is someone's heart. Let me paint a picture. Imagine two people arguing about being late. One person says, "You're always late. You don't care about my time." The other person fires back, "That's not true. I was on time last week. And besides, traffic was terrible. You're exaggerating." Now on the surface, this looks like a conversation about punctuality. But if you peel it back, it's not about minutes on a clock. It's about one person feeling unimportant. It's about respect. If the second person keeps hammering away with facts about traffic or evidence about other times they were on time, they're completely missing the point. The argument will keep going in circles. But what if instead the response was, "I hear you. When I'm late, it makes you feel like you don't matter. That's not what I want. I get that it's frustrating." Notice the shift. We move from debating facts to acknowledging feelings. And here's the magic. When someone feels like their feelings matter, the intensity starts to drop. The volume starts to lower. Because at the end of the day, people don't need perfection from you. They need to feel seen by you. Now, here's where we mess it up. We think acknowledging feelings means agreeing with the words being thrown at us. So if someone says, "You don't care about me," we panic. We think, well, if I acknowledge that, I'm basically saying they're right. But that's not true. Acknowledgement is not agreement. It's empathy. It's simply saying, I recognize how you're feeling, even if I don't agree with why you're feeling it. Think about a kid who's upset because they dropped their ice cream. You don't say, "Oh, come on, that's not a big deal." People have it worse. That's factually true, but it's emotionally useless. What you say is, "I know you're sad because you really wanted that ice cream. I get it." You're not saying the world ended. You're just meeting them where they are emotionally. And guess what? The same principle works with adults, because no matter how grown up we are, in emotional moments, we're not looking for logic first. We're looking for connection. I'll give you another example. Imagine you're in a work meeting and somebody cuts you off. You feel dismissed, overlooked. If the person says, "Well, I only cut you off because we're short on time and your point wasn't that relevant," guess what? That's facts. That's logic. But it doesn't cool you down. It probably makes you angrier. Now imagine instead they said, "Hey, I realize I cut you off earlier. I can see how that probably felt dismissive. That wasn't my intention." Instantly, the emotional temperature changes. You feel respected. You feel acknowledged. The same facts are still true about time limits, but by addressing the emotion first, the facts have a chance to land without sparking more heat. Here's the challenge. You have to train yourself to listen past the words and hear the emotion underneath, because emotional conversations rarely come out clean. People don't say, "Hey, I'm feeling insecure right now, and I just need some reassurance." No, they say, "You never care about me. You're always too busy." They don't say, "I'm scared of losing you." They say, "You don't even try in this relationship." They don't say, "I feel overwhelmed." They say, "Nobody ever helps me around here." And if you only react to the words, you'll stay stuck in the fight. But if you train yourself to hear the feeling underneath, you can respond to the thing that actually matters. And let me be clear, this takes practice. Because in the heat of the moment, your ego will be screaming at you to defend yourself. When someone says, "You don't care about me," your ego says, "Yes, I do. Look at everything I've done for you." When someone says, "You never listen," your ego says, "That's not true. You're exaggerating." But if you can catch yourself, pause, and say instead, "I don't want you to feel uncared for. That's not what I want for us." Suddenly, the entire conversation takes a turn. That doesn't mean the conversation ends there. You may still need to talk through the facts later. You may still need to work on solutions. But if you don't address the feelings first, the facts will never land. It's like trying to build a house on sand. It won't hold. Address the feelings first, and then you can build something solid. This applies everywhere. At home, at work, with your kids, with your parents, with your friends. Feelings first, facts second. And here's something else you need to remember. Sometimes, when people are emotional, they're not looking for you to fix it. They're just looking for you to validate it. They don't need you to solve their problem right away. They just need you to stand in the moment with them and say, "I hear you. I get that this is hard." And for a lot of us, especially problem solvers, that's uncomfortable. We want to fix, we want to give advice, we want to offer the solution. But solutions without validation feel like dismissal. People don't care about your answer until they know you care about their feeling. So the next time you're in a highly emotional conversation, slow yourself down enough to ask, what's the feeling underneath these words? What's the emotion driving this? And then, instead of firing back with facts, respond to the feeling. Phrases like, "I hear that you're frustrated," or "I can tell this matters a lot to you," or "I get that you're upset." can be more powerful in calming the storm than any perfectly crafted argument. It's not about being fake. It's not about pretending to agree. It's about giving the other person the one thing they're actually craving in that moment, to feel seen. Because when people feel seen, they calm down. And when they calm down, then the real conversation can actually begin. Let me tell you something important. When you stay calm, you actually protect your dignity, because words spoken in anger almost always leave regret. Think back to the last time you lost your temper. How many things did you say that you wish you could take back? How many times did you walk away thinking, that wasn't me, I don't even believe half of what I said, I was just mad? That's the danger of being a thermometer. You end up saying things you didn't mean, things that damage trust, things that don't reflect your true character. But when you stay calm, you never have to apologize for being out of control. You don't burn bridges you wish you hadn't. You walk away with your integrity intact. And here's the beautiful part. Calm doesn't just protect your relationships, it protects your own peace. Because every time you let someone else's emotion dictate your own, you give them power over you. But when you decide, no, I'm setting the thermostat here, you reclaim your power. You're not being dragged into their storm. You're standing in your own clarity. That doesn't just help the conversation, it helps you. Now, some of you are probably thinking, Jefferson, that all sounds great, but what about when the other person is completely unreasonable? What about when they're yelling, blaming, and not calming down no matter what I do? And here's my answer. That's when your calm matters most. Because your calm is not about controlling them, it's about controlling you. If they don't come down, fine. But you don't have to go up. You don't have to match their chaos. You don't have to abandon your self-respect just because they abandoned theirs. That's what sets mature people apart. They don't let others dictate their standard. They decide, this is who I am, this is how I communicate, this is how I hold myself, even when you don't. That's real strength. That's leadership. And that's how you win the bigger game, not just the argument in front of you. And let me add this. Sometimes staying calm and being the thermostat isn't just about words. It's about presence. It's about your body language. Crossing your arms, rolling your eyes, sighing in frustration. That's all still being a thermometer. But steady eye contact, open posture, nodding as you listen, that's thermostat behavior. You're signaling calm, respect, groundedness. And people feel that even more than they hear your words. So what do you do when a conversation gets heated? You remind yourself, I don't have to match their chaos. I can set the tone. I can be the thermostat. I can stay calm without backing down. And in that calm, I can hold my boundaries, protect my dignity, and influence the entire direction of this moment. That's the power you carry. That's the choice you get to make every single time emotions start to flare. And here's the truth I want you to remember. You may not be able to control the other person, but you can always control yourself. And in emotional conversations, self-control is the highest form of strength you can show. Because when the shouting dies down, when the emotions fade, people will forget half the words that were said, but they will never forget how you showed up. They'll remember if you matched fire with fire, or if you stood steady in the heat. They'll remember if you lost yourself in the moment, or if you set the tone and held the room. And that memory, that feeling is what builds trust, respect, and influence over time. So the next time emotions rise and everything in you wants to flare up, stop, breathe, and remind yourself thermometers react, thermostats set the tone. And I choose to set the tone. That's how you win, not just the conversation in front of you, but the respect that lasts long after the conversation is over.